Hello and welcome to MCN. Now, I would like to talk to you about conventional sports tourers. And I'm going to start with Kawasaki's Ninja 1000 SX. Now you see, Kawasaki have kind of ruled the roost on conventional sports tourers since this bike was known as the Z1000 SX. And that's because the conventional sports tourer genre has developed in recent years. Yes, you've got BMW's R1250 RS, but it's a little bit expensive, a little bit quirky with its boxer engine. And other rivals like the Tracer 9 GT from Yamaha, and also Multistradas from Ducati, and a few BMW GS's, are that little bit taller, and obviously they don't have the road-focused 17-inch wheel. But there's a new kid on the block that threatens to spoil the Kawasaki's party, and that is the Suzuki GSX-S 1000 GT. So, joining me to talk through these two lovely machines is my good friend and colleague Michael Neves. How are you doing?
All right, you?
I'm very well, So thanks for joining me. I think we should talk through these two bikes. So before we get into the nitty gritty of it, Can you just tell me how much they are?
Yeah, they're both very similar in price, as they are similar in every way actually. They're both around about £11,500, give or take, depending on what colour you have the Kawasaki in, depending on what spec level you have that bike in. The bike sitting there is a Performance Tourer edition, which is about another £2,000 with panniers, flip-up screen, end can, some other little goodies. And you can add about £1,000 onto this with the panniers. But in basic trim, they're around about £11,500, which is pretty affordable really for these kind of bikes.
Absolutely, I see. And let's talk some top trump numbers now.
Yep.
So how much power do they make?
That one makes 140 bhp.
Okay.
Engine slightly bigger than that one's 1043cc, isn't it?
Yeah,
Inline 4. This one makes 150 bhp. 999. This is the engine out of the GSX-R 1000 K5, as everyone knows. That's the old Z1000 engine from 2010, and that's 9 kilos lighter as well. So the performance of that on paper is slightly better than that.
Fantastic. So reasonable. Similar price, similar-ish performance, but what about build quality on the two bikes?
When you see these bikes in the flesh, they're both built really, really well.
Yeah.
The Kawasaki just edges it though. The paint finishes, the attention to detail, just that little bit more premium than the Suzuki. Suzukis are built down to a price a little bit. You know, the paint finishes are a little bit thin, but it's still really, really well made. You know, and it's got some nice equipment on it as well, which that hasn't. It's got Brembos on it, you know, it's got this nice stubby pipe, it's got a banana swing arm, that dash as I say, so it hasn't got a centre stand, nor is that, which sports tourer fans might miss, but they're quite light bikes anyway, so, and I think a centre stand would spoil the bike's handling because they're ground out, don't they, so yeah, it's pretty well equipped and pretty well finished.
I see, so very similar in spec, very similar in price as well, and their sort of overall recipe. So I guess it makes sense then for us to put these two together on a little bit of a test. So what we're going to do for that is something rather special. So rather than normal, where you see Nevesy riding in a lovely hot foreign country. We've decided to stay in England, and it's obviously February and a little bit chilly. But rather than just going for a day's ride, we're actually going to go on a multi-day test to the Peak District, and more specifically Buxton. And we're just going to spend 2 days taking in some beautiful views, some lovely roads, and just find out which of these two is the ultimate conventional sports tourer. So we've done a fair few miles on these bikes now, and we've ended up in this beautiful location. It's really, really nice. And
stunning, isn't it?
Yeah, really, really good. Really, I had no idea this was here.
Nor me.
And yeah, I think we should talk just talk through the bike, shouldn't we? Really?
Yeah, I mean, this is the bike everyone wants to know about, isn't it? This is the one that's been exciting everyone when it was launched. We've seen all the pictures, and I was lucky enough to do the launch in Scotland, and it was really impressive. This GT suits the GSX-S 1000 kind of platform better than anything. And for what we've done over the last couple of days, I still think the same thing. It's still a great sports tourer, fantastic value. From a sporty point of view, it's kind of like a touring GSX-R 1000. It's quite raw. On dry roads, handles quite well. Not so well on wet roads because the tyres aren't great at all. It's a real shame. The tyres are a big letdown. This bike would improve massively. Ride quality, grip, confidence, everything with different tyres. The brakes have got power, but they've got zero feel, especially around town. They're really wooden, and that's a massive minus against this bike as well, because it takes away the enjoyment of braking. Because when you're going through twisty roads, you're accelerating, braking, etc. And if half of that experience is missing, then it does kind of make the bike feel quite dead, unfortunately. It's also quite short geared. You're always looking for 7th on this bike on the motorway. Probably revs about 500 RPM more than that, which is ironic because the SX was the one that used to feel short geared. So it is a fantastic bike, but if I own this, I put longer gearing on, I put better tyres on. There's not much you can do with the brakes with modern ABS. But ridden in isolation, it is a fantastic bike. I think if you own this bike and you've got the panniers as well, I think it'd be really, really useful. It's really comfortable, isn't it?
Yeah.
It does about 48 mpg, and the fuel light comes on at about 160 miles. Theoretical tank range is about 200, which is about the same as that.
Yes.
I think we've said before, these bikes are very, very similar. And it is a nice thing, and this colour is fantastic, as we said before.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say, obviously there are those points like the tyres and things like that, but it's not all bad, is it? I mean,
no.
For me personally, I think the engine alone, there's loads of go.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does go. It sounds brilliant as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it sounds properly mixed.
It feels like a comfortable super bike.
Yes, yeah.
But perhaps not as refined as it could be.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I'll echo the point. I mean, I think the blue looks really nice. When we've been going round for the past couple of days, so even just lining this shot up here, it just looks nice at all angles, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it is a sign of things to come, maybe from Suzuki in the future. But obviously, the Suzuki's not the only bike on this test, and this is the benchmark we've got to compare it against. So talk me through the trip and how this one's fared.
Well, this feels like a bike that is 4 generations old. That's Kawasaki have refined through every generation. It feels 10 years newer than this bike in its refinement. So as soon as you get on this bike, the engine is smoother. The gearing is much better for cruising. It's much more long-legged because it's a slightly bigger engine. This gets its grunt from short gearing, that gets its grunt from having a bigger engine. The suspension is just that little bit plusher.
Yeah.
Tyres make a massive difference. The tyres are excellent on these S22s.
Really good. Yeah,
even in the wet, even in the cold, bang, they're straight there.
Yeah.
I think you noticed this is slightly taller than this one. They're both very, very comfortable. Even though this is lower, it's comfortable for me and I'm tall. You're not quite as tall, are you?
No.
But you found that a little bit taller.
Yeah,
but not badly so.
No, it was just when we swapped at the first petrol station, I just went to swing my leg over as I did the Suzuki and found there was a pannier in my way. I was like, oh, hang on, the back's a little bit taller. But no, once you're on it, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. The brakes are much better. It's proper bite.
Yes.
I mean, even so, the Japanese can't seem to do proper ABS like the Europeans can. And it's nothing to do with the hardware, because this has got Brembos, and they've all got decent electronics. It's just a philosophy. You know, it's more safety than performance with Japanese bikes. So, you know, compare this to an S1000RR or an XR or whatever, the brakes wouldn't be as good as the BMW, but the brakes are much better than the Suzuki, and it's a joy to use them, and that's what gives you that involvement and the enjoyment when you're sporty riding. The dash isn't quite as good as this one, and there's nothing wrong with it in isolation, is there? I mean, with this you can link this to your phone and use a sat nav, which is really handy, and you wouldn't be able to on that. That's got an adjustable screen. It's also got the flip-up screen because this is special edition.
Yes.
To be honest, the wind protection on this isn't bad,
No,
but there's no adjustment. So, you know, for this one, that's a tick. You've got lean sensitive rider aids on this that you haven't on that, which isn't really a big selling point for me, because how often do you lean on the electronics through corners? You know, it's a bit of a nice safety aid to have. But it's not a deal breaker between these two, but it has got them.
Yes.
The gearbox on both bikes are really smooth. You know, I'd take the Kawasaki every time. It's just so much more refined. Maybe not as sporty as this. This is kind of, like I said before, a super bike. Almost feels like a super naked with the bars being so high and straight. Probably this is the one you're going to have a lot of fun on if you've come from a sports bike. But if you want something a bit more refined and a bit calmer, and the Kawasaki is just epic.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I think I was saying to you when we were having dinner last night, obviously I rode the Suzuki first, and then as soon as I got on the Kawasaki, literally from that first squidge of the shock when my bum touched the seat, I just thought, oh, it just feels a little bit, just feels plusher. And then when you get on the road, it just, everything just feels that little bit better screwed together, just, you know, and you're right, it just feels like a newer bike.
So you were looking forward to this?
I was really looking forward to it, yeah.
What do you think after having ridden it now?
Sort of similar to you, really. It's like, in isolation, it's
absolutely fine, isn't it?
It's really good.
It's a great bike.
And because I haven't ridden a proper big bike for a little while, because it's been the winter. When I opened that up for the first time, I thought, you know, flipping out.
Proper fast, isn't it?
Really fast, more than enough to get in trouble with. It might have sort of grown-up panniers and stuff, but it sounds really raucous, and it really goes. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. The TFT is nice and clear. Loads of good stuff. There's just a little sort of things that I found myself questioning, like the cruise control on the Suzuki. Like you activate it on the right bar. Yeah. And then you control it on the left bar. Yeah. And I've got little hands. Yeah. And I couldn't reach to activate it without sort of relinquishing the throttle.
Yeah, yeah. You shouldn't have anything on the right switchgear apart from what you need.
Yeah. It just seems unnecessary, a bit clumsy.
Yeah. And the switchgear itself's quite small and fiddly.
Yes.
With big gloves on both of them, really, but this one's a little bit worse.
Absolutely, yeah. But as you say, in isolation, it's really, really good. It's just unfortunate you get on this afterwards and go.
Exactly.
Oh yeah,
we're being picky, aren't we? We're being picky road testers.
Yes, yeah.
Any of these bikes in isolation are great, but when you ride the two back to back, it is obvious from the first yard that this is more refined.
And obviously, if it's your bike, you know, you can change the tyres, you can change those brake pads.
Yeah, you can, and because it's not £11,500, it's still a lot of money, but because it's not stupid money, you can afford to spend a little bit more, especially if you get them on PCB. Yeah, you can get the dealers put better tyres and all that kind of stuff and put it on your deal, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
So obviously I'm a little bit taller than you.
What do you mean?
How did you find the riding position on these?
It was relatively easy, to be honest. I am 5'6", so considerably shorter than you. I start with the Kawasaki because it was perfect, really. Nice reach to the bars, really comfortable seat. It's got a slightly taller seat than the Suzuki, but it's perfectly manageable, and there's plenty of ground clearance as well. So I reckon on a warm day with those S22s and stuff, I reckon you can have a
track days, no problem.
Oh yeah, 100%. Suzuki's a bit of an odd one for me because again, in isolation, it would have been perfectly fine, but once you've ridden them both, you realise that the pegs feel a little bit high for me on the Suzuki because that seat's a little bit lower. Yeah. But it's all fine. It's still comfortable. Yeah. And also the bars are really far forwards.
Yeah, they need to come back.
So I end up sort of in a bit of a stretch to the bars, in a bit of a crouch, almost like I'm in a rowing boat, playing this sort of halfway house between whether I should be hunched in a sporty position or sat upright like a proper tourer. Yeah. So, you know, it's manageable, but once you've ridden this one...
Not quite as well thought out as that, is it?
That's it, yeah.
Interesting. Well, I think we should now leave this amazing place behind us and go for another ride.
Sounds like a plan. So we said at the beginning of this video that conventional sports tourers are back, and they are, thanks to this Suzuki GSX S1000 GT and the Kawasaki Ninja behind me as well. Now Suzuki have made a really nice bike here, and ridden in isolation, it's a cracking bit of kit and we've really enjoyed riding it. However, when you pitch it alongside the Kawasaki, there are a couple of niggles that are highlighted when you're travelling along. Now the Kawasaki's in its 4th generation now, and it really shows, and when you ride it alongside the Suzuki it just feels that little bit more advanced, feels that little bit more premium, and it's for that reason that it's won our test today. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please remember to like and subscribe and stick around for more. So tell me about the tyres then.
No.